ever been to the dark net? I'm just curious about that. Okay, it's just, yeah, Mary Ann's been to the dark net.
My favorite place.
Your favorite place. I'm more than one other person. I don't go there very much, but wow, it's a world unto itself. Does anybody have any estimate? How much bigger is the dark net than the light net, I guess?
Like 90% of the internet.
The dark net's 98% of the internet.
Something ridiculous.
Yeah,
like that.
crazy stuff, huh? Yeah. Amazing. There's a beautiful world out there.
And only 2 of you have been there. All right, any other questions? I think we tired him out. Oh,
I came late.
I was going to say he's a latecomer, so that's why
My
he was
understanding of the blockchain is there's on a 10-minute latency. You have to wait to prevent double spending. You have to wait to make sure that somebody else isn't spending that same Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean,
Doesn't that kind of make retail inconvenient?
Well, you know, it's for the most part, retailers are very happy to use a transaction that's been unverified as a verified transaction and wait 10 minutes for that to take place. The window is relatively small. It's only been exploited a couple of times. There's fixes being worked on for it. It's actually not that big a deal. You know, one of the fun things about this whole Bitcoin world is that there's so many people just like you who are looking for problems, you know, in it. And anytime people are looking for problems, there's always solutions that are brewing. I was there, I guess last April, when there was very briefly a fork in the blockchain. And that was fun to watch in real time, because the whole Bitcoin community was just like freaking out. Oh, there's a fork in the chain, there's a fork in the chain. And the price fell 10% or something like that. It was quickly repaired. It was because there was a dispute about some verifications of a new block that was just entered into the chain. But it was beautiful to see how closely the system is monitored by the verifiers and miners. It's beautiful. It's just amazing to watch.
So I could go to Walmart, buy a big screen TV, and I'm completely out the door before they discover.
My guess is that Walmart would want to wait that 10 minutes to make sure that there's some confirmations came in.
I have a solution for that, because this is okay. The Bitcoin, the BitPay people, right? For example, they will. Well, in general, with Bitcoin, you can't reverse your transactions. So one of the reasons why BitPay is so successful is because there's such a huge market for chargeback. So people will go to Walmart and say, "I never bought that TV," and now Walmart's stuck with the bill, and that's a really big problem. I mean, it's huge. Like, it's a very big, very costly problem for those companies. So a lot of them love Bitcoin because, you know, if you want a refund, you actually have to go to the company and say, hey, we need to work it out. And I think that safeguards with some of the drawbacks of the 10-minute wait time. And I think for money to hit your account when you to process a credit card, like as a business, it takes 3 to 5 days easily for it to hit your account in the first place. So
yeah, 10 minutes, like whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's actually not that big a deal.
Which is why banks wouldn't like it, because then they can't rip you off on those overdraft fees.
Yeah. Or float your money for a couple of days.
Because you know they do that too.
I always find people who, it's great that everybody's policing the Bitcoin network so closely, but people drawing attention to the problems of Bitcoin, I always like to sort of check myself on these things and compare them to the problems with the existing system, you know? And there's laughably, there's a huge chasm, you know, whatever kind of window there is for chargebacks here and there, or if the internet goes down, all these problems. I mean, the current system is so corrupt, so inefficient, so terrible, consumer unfriendly, and such a fraud risk for everybody. Everybody. I mean, there's probably nobody in this room who hasn't been a victim of credit card fraud at some point. The Bitcoin system is just leagues above. It's not perfect, but it doesn't have to be perfect to replace what we're dealing with now.
It's not just a theoretical thing, though, because reading an article in the popular mainstream press saying that the best way to buy anonymous Bitcoins is somebody on the street. And you get a few people who go and buy it from somebody on the street and get defrauded because of the double scam.
I've bought Bitcoins on the street.
You know Bitcoin street dealers? Where do they hang out? Which corner? We're all going to take a field trip after this.
Well, they're very interesting.
If you want it anonymous.
Look, there's a greater risk that the guy is going to like mug you and steal your iPhone or something like that. But if you just hang around for a few minutes, wait for the first confirmation to come through, it's fine. If you're worried about that kind of stuff. I don't know, I consider
You have
these.
to know to do that.
Yeah, but you've got to know a lot of stuff to use Bitcoin, you know?
You have to know a lot of stuff to do anything. You know, there's a learning curve with any kind of process.
Yeah,
I buy
and
my
there
Bitcoins
are
from friends.
scammers, and there are scammers everywhere. I mean, there's no question about that, right? So, but that's true of everything. I mean, somebody was talking about grandma earlier, and it's like the same guy who calls her up and says, "Hello, I'm from the fire department, and we're raising money for kids with new knee coats." And so people are ripping them off that way. I mean, there is that risk of it. I think the difference is that in order to be involved in Bitcoin in the first place, you got to open up your mind to a lot of things, and you have to start educating yourself because no one is teaching you. I think there's a false sense of security when it comes to a lot of transactions that take place, especially when it comes to dollars and how people interact. I'll tell you this much. How many of you can tell me, right off the top of your head, how much money you have in your checking or savings account today? Probably a lot of you probably can't. But if you had Bitcoin, you could probably tell me exactly how many Bitcoins you have, right?
Yeah.
Because you monitor that much more closely than you monitor your fiat currencies. And it's because there isn't a false sense of security that someone's going to protect it. You know, even though you're good libertarians, you know that when you go home at night, you expect that if something bad happens at your bank, Fifth Third or Chase or wherever you guys are at, that someone's going to take care of it. And you don't feel that way about your Bitcoin. You feel like, with my Bitcoin, I'm the only person protecting it. And so you're much more cautious. I actually hope that never goes away, that we never get into a false sense of security of, look, do I trust everyone who says, hey, I'll send you some Bitcoin? No, I just don't do it. And I think people who are involved in Bitcoin can't do that either. I mean, there are creepers out there, for sure. Yeah.
Where do you see, we're at a political conference, and I feel like we should talk about this, but where do you see this type of technology, not just Bitcoin, but this peer-to-peer, anonymous kind of 4-chain world that we live in, kind of taking the movement? Whether it be, is it the future of online organizing, or where does that come into this? Do you see it, do you see it becoming used for that, like in the next generation of Bitcoin and currency?
I mean, to me, to love liberty right now is the most exciting time, ever, because we have this amazing tool called the distributed network that no generation in history has ever had. I mean, the government's always been able to kind of match tool for tool, And the sweep of history has always been true. We get guns, they take them from us and use them against us. We get cool transportation that we can run away, and then they get transportation, they chase us. This is the way it's gone throughout all of history. Now, for the first time, we have a tool that they cannot control. And it's amazing. It's amazing to think. It's beyond the nation state, beyond the capacity of people with tanks and guns to control the distributed network. It's the greatest innovation of our time. I mean, how many of you, I don't know how to put this. I talk about a distributed network. Some people's eyes glaze over, like, oh, that's too complicated for me. But it's not, really. Look it up, discover it. The distributed network is your friend. It's the friend of liberty. It's the greatest innovation that's ever happened in the history of humanity, as far as I'm concerned. You know how long it's been around? I mean, not that long. File sharing itself began in about the year 1999. The distributed network as we know it today has been around probably 7 years, But it changes absolutely everything. The more we can get on a distributed network, the more we can evade the thugs, the powerful people, the parasites in this world.
Is it possible to counterfeit Bitcoin?
It's not possible to counterfeit Bitcoin. No. You can make Bitcom or whatever. You can invent. I mean, and there are hundreds of thousands of altcoins out there, but they all live in their own ecosystems. So you can't enter the Bitcoin ecosystem without real Bitcoin. Yeah.
I mean, you don't think that if somebody has an intelligence tool, obviously Bitcoin were created by someone. If
Right.
Intelligence is is possessed by somebody else, could they not create another Bitcoin?
No, not really, because it's an entirely open source protocol. It's an important thing. There's no central point of failure. And you know how we've all sort of seen people standing out in front of the Federal Reserve saying audit the Fed, because we don't know what the hell they're doing inside there. It's completely the opposite of the Bitcoin world. We know everything is going on, constantly.
Or isn't everything kept private, like transactions and
Well,
stuff?
the transactions are public.
Public.
Well, that's true. The transactions are public, but the identities are private. But everything else about Bitcoin is 100% open. I mean, the code, anybody can examine it. There are core developers working on it every single day to improve it. only about 75% of Satoshi's original code survives. It's been constantly improved through core developers. If you're a good developer yourself, you can enter into the ranks of the core developers, which is quite something. I love it when people come up to me and they'll say, "Hi, I'm Jim, a core developer." And you go, "Oh, wow." It's like high status. You know? So no, there's no mysteries in the Bitcoin world, none whatsoever. It's again, open source programming. You know, it's another one of the great innovations of our time.
Yeah, the whole open source thing is a little bit unusual. I'm, a little in the middle on that whole IP thing, but just that whole. I know, don't leave me alone. You can lecture me later. But for people to start thinking about that differently, I mean, you see what happens with the open source for Bitcoin, and you're like, all of a sudden you see, well, maybe open source isn't that bad. That means we're all working on it together, and it's going to be the best thing it can be. And it starts to, again, it goes back to Bitcoin changing the way that people think about the world and think about how we impact each other and how do we do business together. So it's not just like the one thing. Even if somebody started messing with Bitcoin and started printing fake ones, and I still think that we would all be the better for the experience, and I think that the free market would prove triumphant once again when it would solve that problem.
I don't even know how that would happen actually, because I mean, like that screen I just showed you, illustrates every new block that enters the chain. You know precisely where it comes from, it's exactly timed according to the protocol. You know all the processing power that was necessary to make it, all the hashing rates that generated the coins, all the verifications. I mean, the system is policed so carefully. It might as well have been made up in Victorian England, It's like Cotton Mather from the Puritan days is governing this thing. It's so severe and so strict. I mean, even the slightest little problems are exposed just almost instantly.
I think that's actually our time. So we want to thank ourselves for doing this.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you guys. And go out and get yourself some Bitcoin, even just a little bit. Did you open your account yet?
Not yet.
All right.
I don't even know where to go to.
Blockchain.info.